Okay, thanks to everyone for joining the PEP webinar this morning. Hopefully that's what you're all on here for. My name is Andy Buick and I work in the technical department at Purdicom. So I'm just going to spend some time this morning talking you through the basics of PEP, what it is, how you might put it together, and what you can get back out of it as well. If you've got any questions, I'll ask if you can just hold on to those until the end, and then we'll open up the floor for anybody to ask any questions at that point. Hopefully you can all hear me as well. If not, then please do let me know. So to start off with, PEP is a hotspot platform. So what we're really looking at here is onboarding customers into a public environment. So we can do that in a number of different ways, whether it be by different devices, different authentication methods, and we can also use that process to do things such as advertising, get information out to our customers and collect information from them. So you'll see at the moment here we're on the dashboard. This is what you'll see when you first log into PEP. And what we have here is initially just a summary of who's been on our network, how many sessions they may have created, the average session time, so how long they've spent on our network, and then also average download and upload amounts of data and total traffic going through the network. You'll also have a graph there of how many users by time to be able to see how that's changing as you use the platform. Different platforms that people are logging on with, whether it be iPhones, iPads, Android devices, and so on. And then you've also got a brief window here into your devices. It's quite useful there to see if you've got any devices that are online, offline, and so on. So you'll see in this particular instance, we have the one MikroTik device there. It's showing green at the moment to suggest that it is online. We also there have sessions by time of day. So you can see how many sessions, whether you have a specific busy period and you may want to target the likes of campaigns during that busy period, and also demographics that will show us the split between male and female or other genders, and also age groups. And for that, really, we're looking at things like social media login, where we can gather that information from those users. So moving down through the menu structure on the left there, first menu option that we come to is devices. And here you'll see all of the devices that you've added to your PEP portal. I've added one by default here, which is a MikroTik device. But if I just click on New in the top right there, you'll see there are a few different options available. So any of these devices that you see listed here will work natively with the PEP platform. How much you can do with them will depend on the device, and we can let you know the different scopes in terms of what you can and can't do. Particularly that is relevant to data rates and the people running out of data usage. So primarily Ruckus, work with Ruckus devices. Obviously that's an important thing for us as we sell those. So Ruckus VSZ has a full implementation. If you also use Cisco Meraki, then PEP will implement well with that. Similar with Cambium CM Pilot, and also with Cisco and LANCOM. So going into our MikroTik device, if you have any platforms already out there that you're looking at to use PEP with, we can provide you with a MikroTik router which will act as a gateway for PEP. So you set up your network as usual, and then you just need to make sure that either this PEP device is your gateway out to the internet, or that it sits in line in front of that of your existing router. All we do with a MikroTik device is give it a name, and then it's tied to the platform by the serial number. So that serial number is quite important. Once we've added that in, we then have hardware settings, although in this instance, hardware settings are defined by a profile, which we'll come to shortly. Once we've created our hardware settings, we can then create our hotspot, and this is obviously what we're then using to get our users online and to manage their experience. So you'll see here a number of different options. First of those is a walled garden. So here we're talking about allowing people to access certain websites before they've actually authenticated onto the platform. In our instance here, we've just allowed access to our own website. If you're using things like social media login or payment, you may need to allow access to the likes of PayPal or alternatively to Facebook, just so that that process can complete. We can also, as part of this hotspot, blacklist and whitelist specific devices. And in so doing, we're allowing or disallowing MAC addresses. We have a number of different content filtering levels, so we can also determine what content our customers are allowed to access. In this instance, we're set to medium, so we're blocking anything adult related and also any illegal activity. Of course, we can choose not to block anything. We can just choose to block pornography, or we can go to a higher level, and at that point, we're actually blocking considerably more. So we're blocking social media, we're blocking our video sharing sites, and also anything that would be considered general time wasting. Moving down from there, we can then select which authentication methods we want our customers to use to get online. So on this particular hotspot, we've selected Click to Get Online, which is a simple button that allows people to go straight online. And we've also selected Facebook, so there we may want to gather people's Facebook information. There are several other options, and we'll come to those shortly. Below there, we then have the content we want to display, and here we're talking about terms of use, obviously important, especially with more recent legal changes such as GDPR. We also have the portal that we want to display, and we also have the survey that if we want to ask a survey as people log in, which survey and what information we want to gain from that survey. You'll notice as well to the right here, we can delete any of those at any time, but we can also actually preview what we're showing. So just as a brief instance there, you can just have a quick click through. I've just had a message saying that nobody can hear me. Is anybody else able to hear me? Okay, so I think some people can hear me. Thank you. Okay, just bear with me a moment. I'm just going to quickly check Robert's connection there. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so as I was saying, you can then preview any of that content within the hotspot. You can also do this elsewhere, so it's not the only location you can do that, but it's useful if you're just having a quick look to see what's going to display on that specific hotspot. We then have a couple of sections at the bottom here related to campaigns that we want to show, and here we're really talking about things like advertising. We may also have vouchers that we may want people to use. So as an example, if you're a shopping centre and you have a food area, you may want to have vouchers available that only display between 12 and 2, for example, that sort of thing. If you want to do that, then that would be a scheduled campaign. Anything you put in as a default campaign, that will always run when you log into that hotspot. So moving down, I mentioned that under hardware settings here, we need to use a profile, and that's specifically for a MikroTik device. I'm going to just quickly jump down now to profiles and how we manage those. So you'll see here we've actually got a couple of sample profiles already built in. This is the profile we're currently using on Pep Demo 002 there, the device that's online. The details area is just arbitrary, so you can give it whatever name you wish. Tags are quite a useful way of knowing what you've got where, especially if you're planning to deploy this to multiple different sites. So you can always put the site name in as a tag just to keep that, so to make sure you know that's in the right area. Moving to interfaces. So this is going to vary depending on the MikroTik device that you've bought. By default, the MikroTik that I'm using here, it's an RB951. So it comes with 5 Ethernet ports, and it also comes with Wi-Fi built into it. And so because of that, you can see here I've got 5 Ethernet ports that I've created, and we've also got a WLAN set up. So just clicking through into the WLAN briefly, you'll see here that I just select the WLAN as the interface I want to use. I then enter an SSID that I want to broadcast from the MikroTik itself. So it's important to note that is the MikroTik itself broadcasting wireless. And then I'm selecting band and channel width, frequency, and then I can also set encryption if I wish to. So once we've built the hardware side of things in terms of the interfaces, we then move on to the network itself. And at this point, we can add either a WAN or a LAN. So WAN is obviously going to be your access out to the internet. We select which interface we want to use. In this case, I've got 5 options, and we've selected Ethernet 1. You can set to either be a DHCP client, or you can just set that to be a static address, in this case with DHCP client. And then we move on to our LAN side, and this is really where we bring the hotspot together. So in this case, I'm selecting wireless LAN as the interface. If I wanted to offload to another wireless environment, I would select a LAN port that wireless network is going to connect into on the MikroTik. And here I'm using the MikroTik to serve DHCP and just selecting my addresses that I want to serve from there. It doesn't have to be DHCP server. You can use something else for that if you so wish. So once we've built that profile together, we'll add it to our device. So we go back up to here, into our hardware settings, and then we can simply select the profile we want to use there. Moving on to authentication. So there are 7 different methods that we can use to authenticate, and we've got one of each listed here as an example. But just to show you, if you wanted to create a new, then you'd simply click on new here, and those are your 7 options. So running through these, click and go, I mentioned it briefly before. It's very simply a click to get online, and that's all there is to it. If I go into the one we've already created here, as well as just being that click button, we can actually build some settings around that. So if we do want to give somebody a quick and easy way to get online, we may want to limit quite heavily what they can and can't do because we're not really getting any information from them. So we can then set download limits, we can set a time limit in terms of how long they can be online, and we can set a speed limit against that as well. Actions is actually just a redirect. So this is once you've logged into the portal, where do we want to redirect you to? And you can break that down by device type. So you can send laptops to a different location than your iOS or Android devices. And then finally, data on the end here. Anybody who has done a click to get online, you can pull their data out as a CSV file, so you can then use that elsewhere. So the second access method here is an access code. And much as you'd imagine, really here we are looking at creating a batch of codes or creating a single code. So we can give that code a prefix. So if it's for a specific event, we may want to just say event 1. And then we can give it a number of codes, 10. Set them to expire if you wish on a given date. And then save that, and that's going to generate those codes for me. You can also import that from a CSV file. And again, then we have the same options in terms of limits and settings we want to apply. Those actions, again, are going to be the same. And once more, we can pull out data. Next is quite a useful one, and that's email verification login. So if you're just wanting to gather an email address and to use for some sort of mail shot at a later date, this is the way you'd want to go. All you need to do here is configure an email address from yourselves, whatever subject, whatever content you want in that email. That's going to then go to the customer and ask them to register that email address back against the PEP portal. And again, I won't go through these, they're exactly the same again. Obviously with data here, that is going to, however, pull out the email addresses that you can use. It's worth noting as well that this integrates quite well with MailChimp. It's something that we've tested here. You can just pull that file out, import it straight into MailChimp, and then use MailChimp as your mail shop device. That is also being looked at for future as an API integration, because there is an API within PEP and within MailChimp. Moving on next, we have Facebook login. Very little to configure here, really it is just your limits and settings, your actions and your data. Obviously this is a very powerful part of the authentication process. If you use Facebook, then you can then pull out more information about the customers who are logging in. They will have accepted that they are providing their age if it's on their Facebook profile, what gender they are, likes, and so on. And obviously then we can then pull that data out via CSV again. So you may also want to charge your customers for access to your network. Obviously that can then be something that you provide a higher tiered service for. If we go to settings here, at the moment PayPal is really the primary choice of payment. You also have the option of ADVAM. So if I select PayPal here, then we're simply entering the API username, password, what currency you want to take that from, and then the API signature. We may also want to provide customers with a username and password, so we can do that. Settings here is just a label, and then our groups is where we generate those users. So we can either create a single user, and that's simply a username and password, and you can assign that to a group you've already created. And then you can also create groups. And you'll notice if I go back to here, you can then create different groups with different limits on them. And finally, we also have a VIP login. And this is really just a passphrase. So you'll see there, as an example, VIP lounge login, and again with your limits associated to that. So once we've selected our authentication methods, we then move down to campaigns. And as I mentioned before, campaigns is really where you're looking at marketing. So this is what people are going to see as they log into the portal. You can use it, again, using retail outlets as an example. You may want different shops to advertise on there, and you could use that to generate some revenue. You may also want to have things like vouchers displaying on there for customers to get money off, that sort of thing. If I create new here, and so what we're doing when we create a campaign, we can assign a survey to that to take some information. We can add some media here if we haven't done already. And then again, we can set a schedule. So when do we want that campaign to start and end? What sort of times do we want it to be displayed, and what days? Again, you can also then set a redirect after people have gone through the campaign, and you can pull data out relating to the surveys that they've completed. Just as an example of some that are auto-created in here, so we have a Hawaiian holiday competition. You can see there it's got a survey added against it. And if I go back to here, I can then pull out a CSV of anybody who's connected to that previously. So moving on to the surveys themselves, how do we create a survey? So we click through onto it, and the content is very simply different options. So whether it be personal, so please enter your details, whether it be an email address, so we can just ask for an email address here rather than use an email verification. Obviously bear in mind that that's not a verified email, so it could be a false one. We can create a tick box, so whether somebody's happy or not, a text item, so it's an open text field, and so on. Once we've built that survey, we can then also do a preview of it. And that will just show you how it's going to display. You also don't have to make surveys compulsory, but you can do if you choose to. So somebody has to fill it in before they can go online. You can also choose whether you always want that to display or not. You may just want it to display the first time somebody logs into the portal, or it can be every time. So moving on to portal designs. So you can choose a portal to be a single page, or you can choose it to be multi-page. just to show you what a single page looks like, we select our branding initially, so you can select a logo, what your page background is going to look like, how that's going to display, so whether it stretches to fit the page or whether it's just a static image. And you can also use colouring if it's not going to stretch the whole screen. You can select footer as well. You can change all the colouring around this and how it displays in terms of curving and that sort of thing as well. So you'll see here again we've got different colour schemes, different background content, any links we may want to be a different colour and sizing, that sort of thing. And then finally we can select what content we want to display on that page. And in here we can also preview each one. So once we've created that portal, we can then go back and preview that in its entirety, and you'll notice that it's opened another page for me, and I can effectively step through the process. So here's what I've entered onto the portal, and if I hit Get Online, then I can agree to my terms of service, and then I can click, and that will get me online. Just as an example of one that's completely rebranded, just to show you how it can look. So this is Lexus Auckland, and you'll see here again, it looks very different. This is actually a multi-page, so we've got a list of links down the left-hand side, and I can click on About. I can click through to the website. I can see what opening hours there are for that particular site, and then we've got a couple of further links down there as well to some films and the international website. Or I can just hit Get Online, and again, that's just a simple click through on this particular portal. So moving down to our terms of use, it's very straightforward. Here we really are just looking at giving a name and a tag, and then adding our content. So it's a simple text field, and obviously you can make parts of it bold, different fonts and so on if you so wish. And you can store as many of these as you like, so if you've got different customers, they obviously may want different terms of use. And once again, you can preview that once you've created it, just to make sure it looks and reads the way you want it to. Moving on to media, you can upload all of your media in advance. And you'll notice you can have different resolutions, and then using stretch, you can make those fit the screen. And you can also preview anything that you've got here just to make sure it looks the way you want it to. You'll notice as well that we have different boxes for different folders for different things. There are certain size requirements in terms of limitations for things like logos and so on. You'll see those as you go through creating the portal. So once you've got all of your connections in place, you can then generate reports on what's been going on your portal. Obviously, there's not a lot on here because it's purely a demo. What you can see here is we have one person logged in. You can see their average session time, what they've downloaded and uploaded, and their total traffic. We can then see when they were logged in, how many sessions they were logged in for. If they've used Facebook, we can see that gender and age breakdown, how they've authenticated. Obviously, in this case, it was a click and go. And then we can see how many new versus return visits. Obviously, in this case, it was just a new visit. If you have multiple sites, it might be useful to see some breakdowns by site, so you can see how many users in different locations. You can also have a look and see whether you have any specific busy days, how many sessions you're getting again per site and usage per site. And then sessions by time of day, so again, so you can target your campaigns to specific periods of time if that's relevant to you. And then what user platforms, so in this case, we've had the one iPhone on there. Final thing on here, you can then just also manage your own account. So by default, it will be branded as you can see here. But you can also go through, you can check your license to make sure it's valid. You can also go through and change that look and feel so that if you've got any customers who are actually going to be added to your own portal, you can change the look and feel for their particular usage of PEP. So can be completely rebranded. And that's really all I wanted to show you through today. I can see that somebody's just asked me a question. So Will, can you then click through to users' Facebook profiles and see their likes, etc.? No, so you're just gathering information from them. You can't actually go through to their profile. So why would you use this over purple is a question from Neil. So what I'm going to do, we've got Alan on here from Incapta as well, so I'm going to unmute him as well if he has anything to add. But so in terms of using this over purple, so one of the big things that customers have come to us regarding is ownership of data. So with PEP, you own all of the data. It's not owned by PEP. With Purple, the data is always owned by them, so once your license expires, you lose access to that data. Alan, is there anything else that you wanted to add to that at all?
No, thanks, Andy. Just for the ownership of the data, but the ease of use with building the portal, very easy to put together. The question regarding the likes, you can view the profile URL from the view users within the demographics on the dashboard page, and the likes interests will be available as a report within the next few weeks. That is something that's been asked a lot, so that will be available to you within the platform.
Great, thanks, Alan. Neil's just asked whether licensing is per AP or per site. So it's per AP. Obviously, if you buy a MikroTik, then that is actually your gateway. So at that point, you're licensing the MikroTik device. But depending on how many users then you're going to have, we may need to push you towards a better piece of hardware, if you like, a more powerful MikroTik router. So we have scales of which router you would buy depending on how many users you're expecting. Neil's also asked whether the MikroTik can handle VLANs. Yes, it can. And yes, you can have different DHCP scopes. There's also been a question around Unify support. I'll have to pass that Alan's way. Alan, do you know that at all?
What, the hardware, other hardware?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. If as Andy mentioned, if the hardware is not listed on the devices, then we can connect it on the back of the gateway. We would require a gateway. We are adding more vendors. There's another 3 vendors that are going to be added within the next 6 weeks, I've been told. So and looking forward to getting those on board. And then we're starting to add more and more as they are being requested. But anything that is not listed can be used through a gateway.
Darren has asked, does Meraki work without a gateway device? Yes, it does. So if I just take you back to devices, that's okay, Alan. If I just take you back to here, you simply click New here, and you've got Meraki there as an option. We do have a guide for setting up Meraki as well, so we can send you that if that's something you're looking to use. Alan, correct me if I'm wrong, the only thing that's missing there is the radius COA for data limits.
No, that's now been sorted out. So
that's been added as well.
The COA packet is now being passed through the cloud.
So then, Darren, for Meraki, it's fully compatible. So Neil, sorry, you said large DHCP scopes. So yes, it doesn't have to be just a /24. You can set the default gateway, so you can make it much wider than that if you've got a large number of users. So as an example, we had somebody running a demo last week and they needed 500. Admittedly, that's not the biggest scope out there, but yeah, so they used a /23 network. Will, you've asked about MikroTik models for gateways for large conferences. I don't know off the top of my head, sorry, but I do have that information, so I can get that across to you separately. Unless Alan knows off the top of his head. 1 to 2,000 users.
So
1 to 2,000?
1 to 2,000. The CCR router series. They are the best ones. The one you rack mount, the 1009, I think it is.
Thanks. Yeah, we'll get that across to you, Will, anyway. No, that's okay. We'll send that across separately. So Neil, we currently run Draytech routers, 5 or 6 VLANs, 1,500 IP address scopes we need to make sure we can replicate that with microtics. I don't see why you couldn't do that, Neil. And again, you'd probably be looking at one of the larger CCR devices. But again, we can send through which devices you may want to use for the larger networks. So Tom has asked, just to confirm on devices, you don't have to use a router but can select the zone director instead. Absolutely you can. So zone director is another option for devices. The only thing to note with zone director is that definitely doesn't support data limiting. So if you are looking to limit users by the amount of data, then you would need to look at microtik, or potentially, if it's a new environment, you may want to use a smart zone instead of a zone director. So Neil's asked, if we run the microtik router with 5 APs, what is the license count? Sorry for the answer. So you're actually then licensing the microtik rather than the access point sat behind it if you already have an existing network. So you'd be buying against the microtik device. Okay, and that looks to be every question at the moment. Does anybody have any further questions at all? Okay. Okay, Neil's just said once reviewed pricing. Fair enough. So obviously, any questions you've got after the fact, if you just let us know, and either myself or one of my colleagues will be happy to get back to you. And I hope it's been useful for you all. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll end it there if no more questions. Sorry, we have just had one. So trials. We do have a number of the microtik RB951 routers in stock as demo units, so we can provide those. If you're looking to trial anything specific, then do let us know, and we can look at that on a case-by-case basis rather than sending out the microtiks. But generally for trials, we will send that out. And I don't know if you've been made aware, you also get a free fidget spinner at the moment if you are interested. I'm told that sold one customer. It is all about the fidget spinner. Okay, so yes, please do get in touch with your account manager if you are interested in a trial, and we'll be happy to set that up for you. Sorry, Alan, I didn't hear you then.
I just said, especially with a 6 weeks holiday with people with kids, give them a fidget spinner and keep them quiet.
Yeah, definitely. Okay. So thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Have a good day.